Welcome to our YouTube channel, The Alien Tales, and please ensure that you have subscribed.
Her kind requires 3 partners. I refuse to share her heart. Their biology demands a quartet bond. I broke their sacred tradition with my human jealousy. Now we're fugitives from 2 worlds. The crystalline spires of New Thessaly gleamed under twin suns as I stepped off the transport, my diplomatic credentials burning like a lie in my pocket. Ambassador Thorne had sent me here to negotiate mining rights, not to fall in love with his daughter. Lyralei Thorne stood waiting at the platform's edge, her opalescent skin catching the light like scattered diamonds. The Velthani were beautiful in ways that defied human comprehension. Their flesh shifted between translucent and solid, revealing the bioluminescent patterns that pulsed beneath like living constellations. But Lyralei was different. Where her people's markings flowed in communal harmonies, hers flickered erratically, almost rebelliously. "Dr. Kaine Holbrook," she said, extending a hand that felt like touching liquid starlight. "My father speaks highly of your xenobiology research." I tried to focus on protocol, on the careful dance of interspecies diplomacy. But her voice carried undertones that resonated in frequencies humans weren't supposed to hear, sending shivers down my spine. The Velthani communicated partially through bioelectric fields, and I was picking up emotions that weren't meant for me. Loneliness, isolation, a desperate hunger for connection. "The honor is mine, Ambassador Thorne," I managed, using her formal title despite the intimacy I felt radiating from her touch. She smiled, and for a moment her bioluminescent patterns synchronized into something achingly beautiful. "Please call me Lyralei. And Dr. Holbrook." Her grip tightened almost imperceptibly. "I hope you'll find our world illuminating." As she led me through the gleaming corridors toward the embassy, I couldn't shake the feeling that she was as much a prisoner of diplomatic necessity as I was. Neither of us knew we were about to shatter the foundations of 2 civilizations. The embassy's research wing hummed with alien technology that made my human instruments look primitive. Lyralei worked beside me, cataloging Velthani biochemistry with a precision that bordered on artistic. For 3 weeks, we maintained professional boundaries, discussing cellular structures and metabolic processes while carefully avoiding the electricity that sparked between us. But tonight, as rain lashed the crystal windows and cast shifting patterns across her luminescent skin, she asked the question I'd been dreading. "Have you ever wondered why human relationships are binary?" She didn't look up from her microscope, but her bioluminescent patterns pulsed with nervous energy. "One person, one heart, one soul mate for life." I set down my stylus, knowing we were crossing into dangerous territory. "It's how we evolved. Pair bonding ensured survival, child rearing, resource sharing." "But you're alone," she observed, finally meeting my eyes. "No mate, no offspring. By your species standards, you're incomplete." The words stung because they were true. "And you," she laughed, a sound like crystal chimes in a gentle breeze. "My kind reaches maturity at 100 standard years. We must bond with 3 others in a quartet configuration, emotional, intellectual, and spiritual symmetry." Her patterns dimmed. "I'm approaching 150, still unmated." "Why?" "Because I can't feel the connection with other Velthani. My bioelectric signature is aberrant. Wrong." She touched her chest where her heart light pulsed irregularly. "But with you," she didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. I felt it too, the impossible resonance between human neural patterns and her alien biochemistry. We were biologically incompatible species finding emotional harmony in the spaces between science and miracle. "Lyralei," I whispered, reaching across the lab table. When our fingers touched, her entire body flared with golden light, beautiful and terrible and absolutely forbidden. 3 months into my assignment, I found Lyralei crying in the embassy's garden. Velthani tears were liquid light, cascading down her cheeks like fallen stars. Her usual radiance had dimmed to barely perceptible flickers, and she looked more fragile than I'd ever seen her. "The council sent word," she said without preamble. "They've arranged my quartet bonding ceremony. 3 suitable partners have been selected based on genetic compatibility and social standing." My stomach dropped. "When?" "6 months. Just after your diplomatic mission concludes." Her laugh was bitter. Convenient timing, isn't it? I knelt beside her on the luminescent grass, wanting to take her in my arms but held back by the weight of impossibility. Maybe it won't be so bad. Your people have maintained these bonds for millennia. You don't understand. She turned to face me, her eyes blazing with desperate intensity. I've tried to form connections with others of my kind. The bioelectric resonance is there, technically functional, but it feels like dying. Like surrendering everything I am to become part of a collective consciousness. But that's your nature. No. She stood abruptly, her patterns flaring with defiant energy. This is my nature. What I feel when I'm with you. The way my consciousness expands instead of dissolves. The way I become more myself, not less. The confession hung between us like a bridge we couldn't cross. I was human. She was Velthani. Our species had been allies for barely a decade, and interspecies relationships were politically explosive, scientifically impossible, and socially taboo. Kaine, she whispered, using my first name for the first time. I know what I'm asking is selfish and dangerous and probably insane, but I need you to know. You're the only person in 2 galaxies who makes me feel truly alive. When I finally kissed her, the world exploded into golden fire. We became thieves of time, stealing moments between official duties and diplomatic functions. The embassies and used storage levels became our sanctuary, where Lyralei could let her bioluminescent patterns flow freely without fear of observation. In the darkness, she glowed like a living constellation, and I mapped every point of light with reverent fingers. Your species is so linear, she murmured against my neck, her voice sending vibrations through my bones. You experience time as a straight line, past, present, future. But when we touch, I feel everything simultaneously. Every moment we've shared, every possibility for moments we haven't had yet. I traced the patterns along her collarbone, watching them pulse in response to my touch. What do you see in our future? Her light dimmed. Shadows. Pain. But also, she pressed closer, her skin warming against mine. Joy beyond anything my people have ever known. Love that transforms instead of absorbs. We both knew our relationship was borrowed time. Every week brought new pressure from the Velthani Council for Lyralei to finalize her quartet selection. Every day brought fresh reminders that I was a temporary assignment, expected to return to Earth once the mining negotiations concluded. But in those stolen hours, none of it mattered. She taught me to perceive her bioelectric communications, and I learned to speak in the frequency of touch and warmth that her people couldn't feel. We created our own language, our own world, our own impossible future. Promise me something, she whispered one night as we lay tangled together in the phosphorescent darkness. Anything. If they force me into the quartet bond, if I lose myself in their collective consciousness, remember this version of me. Remember who I was when I was yours. I promised, not knowing I would soon be fighting to ensure she never had to lose herself at all. Ambassador Thorne's office felt like a tribunal as I stood before his desk, official documents scattered between us like evidence of a crime. His expression was carved from diplomatic stone, but his eyes held the fury of a father whose daughter had betrayed everything he'd worked to build. 3 months, Dr. Holbrook. 3 months you've been conducting an unauthorized xenobiological study on my daughter. His voice was Arctic calm. Did you think I wouldn't notice the energy fluctuations in the unused sections? The bioresonance readings that suggest intimate physical contact between species. I tried to maintain professional composure, but the words came out raw with emotion. Ambassador, if you'd just listen. Listen to what? Your justification for jeopardizing a decade of carefully constructed diplomatic relations. He stood, pacing behind his desk like a caged predator. The Velthani Council is already questioning Lyralei's fitness for quartet bonding. Her bioelectric signature has become increasingly erratic, and they're beginning to suspect outside influence. She's not defective, I said fiercely. She's evolving. Her ability to form connections with other species could be the next step in Velthani development. She's my daughter. The mask of diplomacy finally cracked. Do you have any idea what happens to unbonded Velthani past maturity? Their bioelectric systems destabilize. They lose cohesion, literally dissolving back into component energy. The quartet bond isn't just tradition, it's survival. The words hit like physical blows. There has to be another way. There is. You leave. Tonight. I've already arranged transport back to Earth. He slid termination papers across the desk. Your research assignment is concluded, and you are permanently barred from Velthani space. I stared at the documents, seeing the end of everything that mattered. And if I refuse, then I'll have you arrested for xenobiological contamination and violation of interspecies contact protocols. Your choice, Dr. Holbrook. Leave quietly, or be dragged away in shackles. Outside his office, Lyralei waited in the corridor, her patterns dim with heartbreak. She'd heard everything. Lyralei's quarters overlooked the embassy gardens where we'd first confessed our feelings. Now the same space felt like a mausoleum for dreams. She stood at the window, her usually radiant form barely glowing in the darkness, and I knew she was already beginning to fade. "My father thinks he's saving me," she said without turning around. "But he doesn't understand that losing you is the same as dying anyway." I moved behind her, not quite touching but close enough to feel the heat radiating from her skin. Maybe he's right. Maybe I'm being selfish, asking you to abandon your people's ways for someone you've known less than 6 months. Selfish. She spun to face me, her patterns flaring with sudden intensity. "Kaine, look at me. Really look." I did, seeing past the alien beauty to the person beneath. Brilliant, passionate, desperately lonely, and utterly certain of what she wanted. In 150 years, I've never felt truly alive until I met you. Every interaction with my own species feels like wearing a costume that doesn't fit. But with you, I'm not trying to be someone else. I'm becoming who I was always meant to be. She pressed something into my hands, a small bioluminescent crystal pulsing with her unique energy signature. "This is a communication beacon. If you take it, we can stay connected across any distance. But it also means running, abandoning everything we've ever known." The implications crashed over me. "You're talking about leaving your world permanently." "I'm talking about choosing love over law, about believing that some bonds are stronger than biology or politics or fear." Her eyes searched mine. "I won't ask you to sacrifice your life for mine. But if you're willing to build a new life together, somewhere neither of our peoples can reach us." I closed my fingers around the crystal, feeling its warm pulse sync with my heartbeat. The rational part of my mind cataloged everything we'd be giving up: careers, families, entire civilizations. But the rest of me, the part that had been empty until I found her, knew there was really no choice at all. "When do we leave?" The cargo freighter Meridian's Edge lifted off from New Thessaly's secondary port at 0347 hours, carrying what appeared to be standard mining equipment bound for the outer colonies. Hidden in a shielded compartment behind the engine housing, Lyralei and I held each other as her homeworld fell away into the darkness of space. Captain Voss was a smuggler who asked no questions as long as the payment cleared, but even she seemed nervous about harboring fugitives from both the Human Colonial Authority and the Velthani Council. "Your friend's energy signature is playing hell with my instruments," she muttered, checking readings that flickered wildly whenever Lyralei's emotions spiked. "I'm sorry," Lyralei whispered, trying to suppress her bioluminescence. But fear and excitement kept leaking through her control, sending cascades of light rippling across her skin. "Don't apologize for being beautiful," I murmured against her ear, and she smiled despite everything. 3 days out from New Thessaly, the pursuit ships found us. 2 Velthani interceptors and a human patrol craft, coordinating their search with unprecedented cooperation. The irony wasn't lost on me. Our love had finally achieved the diplomatic unity our governments had struggled to maintain. "Attention, freighter Meridian's Edge," came the transmission from the lead ship. "You are harboring fugitives wanted for violation of interspecies contact protocols. Prepare to be boarded." Captain Voss looked at us with something between sympathy and regret. "I can't outrun 3 military vessels. You've got maybe 10 minutes before they dock." Lyralei squeezed my hand, her patterns cycling through complex emotions I was just learning to read. Fear, yes, but also determination and something that looked remarkably like joy. "The escape pods?" I asked. "1 pod, minimal life support, Maybe 48 hours until the beacon runs out. Voss shrugged. It's suicide. Lyralei stood, her entire body blazing with sudden, brilliant light. No, she said firmly. It's a chance. The rogue planet Keth 7 had no sun, no official designation, and no reason for anyone to visit its frozen surface, which made it perfect for 2 fugitives who needed to disappear completely. Our escape pod had crashed through the ice shelf, coming to rest in a cavern system lit only by Lyralei's bioluminescence. The atmospheric readings are marginal, I said, checking our emergency supplies. We've got maybe a week of oxygen recycling before the scrubbers fail. Lyralei didn't seem concerned. She moved through the crystalline caverns like a living torch, her patterns shifting into configurations I'd never seen before. This place feels ancient, sacred almost. I followed her deeper into the cave system, watching ice formations glitter in her wake. Lyralei, we need to focus on survival. Finding water, extending our air supply. Kaine. She stopped so suddenly I nearly collided with her. Look, the cavern opened into a vast chamber filled with towering crystal formations that hummed with barely audible harmonics. But more incredible than the natural architecture were the walls, covered in bioluminescent patterns that matched Lyralei's signature almost exactly. These markings, she breathed, approaching the nearest wall with reverent fingers. They're Velthani but old, centuries old. As she touched the crystal surface, the entire chamber erupted into responsive light. The walls pulsed in synchronized waves, creating a symphony of illumination that made my vision blur with tears. It's a message, she whispered, her own patterns now perfectly synchronized with the ancient recordings. From others like me, Velthani who couldn't conform to the quartet system, who were exiled or fled rather than surrender their individual consciousness. The revelation hit like a physical blow. You're not defective. You're not alone. She turned to me, her face radiant with wonder and vindication. They found ways to survive, to maintain their bioelectric coherence without the quartet bond. And Kaine, her voice dropped to an odd whisper. Some of them bonded with other species entirely. We weren't abominations. We were pioneers. 6 months in the crystal caves of Keth 7 transformed us both. Lyralei learned to channel the ancient techniques preserved in the wall carvings, stabilizing her bioelectric signature without need for traditional quartet bonding. I adapted to the alien environment, my human physiology somehow finding harmony with the planet's unique energy fields. But we couldn't hide forever. The supply ship will arrive tomorrow, I said, monitoring our long-range communications array. Captain Voss kept her word. Food, medicine, and news from the outside. Lyralei nodded from her meditation spot among the singing crystals. Her mastery of the ancient arts had grown remarkable. She could now project her consciousness across vast distances, touching the dreams and emotions of others like her scattered throughout the galaxy. There are 12 of us now, she said softly. 12 Velthani who've chosen individual consciousness over collective bonding. Some with human partners, others alone but free. 12 people against 2 galactic governments? A movement, she corrected, rising with fluid grace. Kaine, what we've discovered here could revolutionize how both species understand consciousness, love, and identity. The question is, do we stay hidden and safe, or do we fight for the right to exist? I understood what she was really asking. We could remain in exile, building our secret sanctuary while others like us suffered in isolation. Or we could return to face the consequences of our choice, armed with proof that love transcends biology and tradition. The diplomatic immunity your father stripped from me only applies in human space, I said slowly. And your exile only matters if you acknowledge the Council's authority. Her patterns flared with dangerous hope. You're suggesting we go back? I'm suggesting we go forward. Together. Not as fugitives, but as ambassadors for a new kind of relationship between our peoples. She crossed the cavern in 3 swift strides, capturing my face in her luminous hands. They'll try to destroy us. Probably. I smiled, leaning into her touch. But first they'll have to catch us. 1 year later, the Interspecies Council convened its first emergency session since the Velthani first made contact with humanity. Representatives from both governments faced a problem they'd never anticipated. A growing movement of individuals who refused to conform to biological imperatives or political expedients. Lyralei and I stood at the center of the great assembly chamber, no longer fugitives but recognized advocates for what the media had dubbed variant bonding. Around us sat 43 other couples, Velthani who'd chosen individual consciousness over quartet systems, humans who'd found completion with alien partners, and even a few representatives from other species who'd been inspired by our example. The evidence is irrefutable. Lyralei addressed the assembly, her voice carrying both human passion and Velthani harmonics. Consciousness is not limited by biology. Love transcends species barriers. What we've built together doesn't diminish our peoples. It expands them. Ambassador Thorne sat in the human delegation, his expression unreadable as he watched his daughter argue for the right to exist. Beside him, the Velthani Council maintained their traditional stoic composure, but I could see cracks in their unity. "You ask us to abandon millennia of successful social structure," challenged Council Prime Zerath, "to validate relationships that should be biologically impossible. We ask you to evolve," I replied, standing beside the woman who'd taught me that the impossible was simply another word for untried. To recognize that consciousness, human, Velthani, or something entirely new, has the right to define itself. The debate raged for hours, broadcast across 2 worlds and a dozen colonies. But in the end, it wasn't arguments that swayed the vote. It was the sight of couples who glowed with genuine happiness, who'd found in each other what their own species couldn't provide, who proved that love could indeed conquer biology, politics, and fear. When the final tally came in, recognition of variant bonding rights by a narrow margin, Lyralei's patterns exploded into brilliant celebration, joined by every Velthani in the chamber. We'd won more than the right to exist. We'd won the future, and